Recordings of Julian Assange's guilty plea, by which he regained his freedom after 12 years, have been released to the public. While he accepted his actions were a violation of the U.S. Espionage Act, he also stated his belief that the U.S. Espionage Act and the First Amendment, which upholds freedom of speech, are in contradiction with each other.
Working as a journalist, I encouraged my source to provide information that was said to be classified in order to publish that information. I believe that the First Amendment protected that activity, but I accept that as written, it's a violation of the Espionage Act statute. I believe the First Amendment and the Espionage Act are in contradiction with each other.
Well, let's cross live now to Roger Waters, musician, founding member of Pink Floyd, and outspoken activist on human rights. Roger, great to have you on the program with us. Of course, the major new development in the last week was that Julian Assange has finally been released from jail. I know that you personally advocated for him for years and have been very vocal about his cause. Can you tell us how you feel seeing him finally free?
Well, obviously, I'm very, very happy to see him released. And it was interesting to hear in your introduction that, how he spoke about the plea deal that he made, and how he said, I just heard your reporter saying that he said that freedom of speech and the espionage are incompatible. And he's entirely right about that. So Julian Assange is still telling the truth, even after 15 years of vicious persecution by the Western powers. So that's a good thing. Thank you, Julian. We need you back. You need as much time off as you need to get healthy again. And then we want you back on the world stage telling the truth about the crimes of our leaders.
In terms of Assange's guilty plea and those words that he said about the Espionage Act and the First Amendment being in contradiction to each other, do you think this is Washington using a facade of national security in order to silence journalists?
Yes, of course it is. That's exactly what it is. It's an attempt. I've always said Julian Assange is the magpie in the hedge, you know. Gamekeepers in the United Kingdom kill magpies and they hang their dead bodies in the hedge as a warning to other birds that might steal pheasants' eggs or whatever it is they're trying to protect. In this case, the truth about their policies and what's actually going on in the world and why the world is spiraling out of control, probably to its extinction because of the power structures in our politics. Certainly in the United States of America, where I live.
Right. Roger, what made you so personally involved with the Assange case? Because he's had many activists over the years, and many people also abandoned him. Why are you so personally involved with Assange and his fight for freedom?
Well, like everybody else, back in 2010, Chelsea Manning extremely courageously released the collateral murder videos, and Julian Assange, along with many national papers, in fact, published them. So he was the publisher in the thing, and I saw that video, and so did millions of other people, and that was an extremely important act on Julian Assange's behalf. And I don't know if you remember, but back then in the early 2000s, all the speeches that Julian Assange made to camera, he always said, when we go to war, it is based on lies, he said. The Gulf of Tonkin, a lie, which was the official beginning of the war in Vietnam, and so on and so forth. Okay, I was listening to your program just now, and people were talking about Zelensky and the Ukraine and the war and will he continue as leader and blah, blah, and blah, blah, blah. Well, I've followed the war in the Ukraine as well, pretty closely since it started in February 22. So that's of enormous interest to me. I cannot believe there are people in Ukraine who still support the continuance of the war against Russia in Ukraine. I mean, everybody with half a brain could see it was perfectly obvious that the people of Ukraine have an absolute right to live in peace and hopefully some prosperity to bring up their children like everyone else in the world. But I believe that because I believe in basic human rights for everyone, all our brothers and sisters, Russian, Ukrainian, Chinese, Palestinian, let us not forget, all over the world, irrespective of their ethnicity or their religion or their nationality. So the sooner that negotiations begin between the Russian Federation and the government of the Ukraine, the better, because this war has been completely senseless since the moment it started. I heard you earlier on RT talking about Maidan and 2014 and the ensuing civil war in the Donbass and so on and so on. We are, all those of us with an IQ above room temperature have been reading about this for years. I've been speaking about Ukraine for years. The war should never have started. And if the West were prepared to negotiate and listen to both sides of the conversation, it never would have done. It is tragic that all those Ukrainian lives have been lost for nothing. It's not like they're going to get a better deal than they would have done 2 years ago in February 2022, when a peace deal had been done, let us not forget, in the Istanbul agreements. And it was scuppered by the US government, aided by Boris Johnson, who was the Prime Minister of England at the time. It is tragic beyond all measure. So I keep my fingers crossed that they can call an end to it now and come to a reasonable conclusion to it. That supports everybody's security, not just in Eastern Europe, by the way, not just Ukrainian security and Russian security, but the security of the rest of Europe as well. Because the governments of many EU countries are rattling their sabers as hard and loud as they can, the French, the Germans, the English, and it's insane, the thought of having another world war.
Yeah.
Really? Mm-hmm. Come on, guys, wake up. The answer is no. Talk to one another.
Yeah, I appreciate...
Vladimir Putin wants to talk. Talk to him.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
I appreciate your thoughts and understand I know that you have a deep knowledge of what led to the war in Ukraine and the Western efforts to continue to prolong it. I want to go back to Assange for a moment here, because it took him 12 years to win back his freedom. That, of course, is a very heavy price to pay for what he believes. What can you tell us? What are your thoughts on how the U.S. and British governments treated him?
Well, it's the way that he was treated by both the US and the UK government is absolutely appalling. What they have done in their treatment of Assange is they have freely and openly admitted to the rest of the world that they don't give a fig for the rule of law. You know, the Americans are always talking about rules-based order, but international rule-based order, but what that means to them is, you do as I say or we're going to kill you. Those are the rules by which they abide. I'm a huge supporter of the International Court of Justice and the ICC. I wish all the countries of the world and all the members of the United Nations were signatories to the Statute of Rome. And so that the ICC and the ICJ had some legal teeth, so that we could imprison Joe Biden and Netanyahu and whoever, that these people could be brought to justice. And that's what Julian Assange believed. That's why they locked him up. Mm-hmm. That's why they wanted to kill him. And if they'd got him in America, they would have killed him. Mm-hmm. So thank goodness he's back with Stella and the two boys. You know, it's a huge relief to all those of us who not only love Julian and Stella and the boys and John Shipton and Gabriel, his brother, but we love all our brothers and sisters. And we believe that Julian Assange, like all of us, should have basic, civil, political, human rights under international law. And at the moment, people don't, because we live in a world where whoever's weaponized themselves the more will bully the others into submission if they can. So happily, that's not going to work anymore. It worked for a few hundred years, but those days are over. Now we have to cooperate one with another because we face a common enemy in climate change. But we have to start talking to one another. The American government, the American empire are the worst offenders, as everybody in the world knows, and they deny. They have to start talking to their brothers and sisters in China and in Russia. They cannot just say, we're not talking to you because we're the good guys and you're the bad guys, and a conversation is meaningless. No, it isn't meaningless. It's absolutely necessary, or we're all going to go up in smoke. So get used to the idea. And I will go on fighting to my last breath to get you to talk, talk, talk. If we're going to save this small, beautiful planet that we call home, we have to talk to one another.
Yeah, absolutely. Roger, you had a chance...
And we miss you, Artie, in London.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that you're a fan. Roger, you had a chance to visit Assange in prison last year. Can you tell us more about that visit? What did you see? What were the conditions like that he was kept under?
Well, we sat in a large room. There were about 20 prisoners. They each sat in their own space. What I didn't notice until I was about to leave was that the prisoners sat on red chairs. There was one red chair there and one there and one there. And grouped around the red chairs were blue chairs, which were for family and friends and visitors. The most chilling part of the whole thing, well, I have two important memories. One was I was chatting to Julian, and he was there, and we were talking, and the kids were running around and going off and, getting a packet of crisps with Stella, and while Julian and I talked, and I said to him, "You're looking good," because he didn't look, and he was smiling, and I think he was glad to see me and whatever, and he looked at me in the eyes, and he went, "I'm not. I'm not good." And I went, and my heart sort of fell apart in that moment. I thought, of course you're not. You're banged up for 23 and a half hours every day. You've been in here nearly 4 years now. Before that, you were locked up in the Ecuadorian embassy for 8 years. And for what? Because you told the truth about American war crimes, among other things? Yeah. So that was one thing. But when we left, we had to all queue up and be searched again when we all went out of the big room where we'd met the prisoners, okay? And I turned and looked over my shoulder, and those 20 men were all sitting completely still and quiet on their red chair, because they are not allowed to move a muscle until all the visitors have left the room. And that was a very bizarre moment.
Okay.
Very difficult to walk out of that room, leaving them there on their red chair alone.
Okay. All right, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much, Roger Waters, for your time and sharing your thoughts with us. That was Roger Waters, musician, founding member of Pink Floyd, and outspoken activist on human rights. Thank you.